Well, good evening. I hope you can hear me all right. As promised, another Facebook Live. Thank you for all your questions and comments. We'll wait for a few more people to get online. And then we'll start answering some questions. If you do have any comments or questions, please do post them. I'll either try and answer them tonight, or I'll try and do them at a later date. But please say hello when you come online. So we've had some really good questions last night and from things we've done before. We do get a lot of questions about, can you really beat anxiety for good? How can it be done? What's the process for doing that? So I'll answer some of that shortly when we've got a few more people online. And the answer is yes, you can totally get control of anxiety, usually in 90 days or less. It really depends where you are, but typically most of our clients totally beat it in 90 days or less. However, if they don't, they usually dramatically dropped it down to a manageable level within sort of 2 to 3 weeks, if not before. So it's quite powerful. Okay, so let's start getting on with the first question. So the first question I got was, how did I get into doing this? Which really relates back to the second question, which is, how did I beat my anxiety? Because when I was younger, when I was a kid, I had terrible anxiety, so bad in fact that I couldn't say the words S or K because I had a terrible stammer. I had terrible stress as well with the anxiety. I had no self-confidence, no self-esteem. And the reason being is I'd been quite ill as a child. I quickly developed a sort of a chest problem very similar to asthma called bronchial spasms. I was allergic and intolerant to everything under the sun. And that basically happened because when I was younger, I was given an antibiotic and another one and another one. And today they're much further forward in knowing not to give all these antibiotics and problem drugs out to people, but it just buggered up my immune system. So I got to the point at about 15, probably 16, and then I ended up with an appointment at the hospital, and they basically said, we want to put your son onto disability. I said that to my dad. And the reason being is I'd lost so much time at school. They'd give me every medication that they could to sort out the asthma and the tolerances and the constant colds and the coughs, and I was the size of a house. And I was quite depressed, stressed, anxious. And this kind of dragged on and on and on. So they got to the point at the age of 16 and said, look, just give up. Let's put you on disability, spend the rest of your life sitting and watching the telly. There's not an awful lot we can do about this. And thankfully, my dad didn't like that. It's very rare I've seen him get annoyed, but he really lost his rag that day. And he dragged me off to see what was known as a naturopath at the time. Now, my dad used to be a director of a psychiatric hospital. And really, they didn't know much about anxiety back then. I mean, this was 30 plus, 40 plus years ago. So my dad dragged me off to this lady who was classed as a naturopath. And she was actually quite a renowned psychologist, psychiatrist in the Northeast, who'd quit with the idea that they really weren't helping anybody. And she'd gone down a different route to try and help people. So I went to see this lovely lady. And she basically said to me, I needed to make some changes. I had to make changes to my diet, to my thinking. I had to try and get off all the medication that was causing problems. And it took 6 months of hell to do that. It's quite difficult for somebody 15, 16-year-old back then to try and start avoiding dairy and all sorts of products and foods that were causing problems. But I slowly did it. And the difference was quite amazing that within 2 years, I'd started running my own business. I actually started working as a mobile DJ. And the reason why I did that was that I pushed myself to do something that would get me out of that situation. It was kind of a tipping point. It was a breakthrough. And then I said, I can't live like this anymore. I don't want to go on disability. You know, I'd lost loads of time at school. I had no qualifications. I was quite unhappy. I was depressed. I didn't have many friends. And when I was at school and around other kids, I was a very awkward child. I couldn't communicate well. I didn't know what to do. So I made that goal that I wanted to do something that got me out there, that pushed me to do it. And it terrified me at the time. So I did go back to college and I got some qualifications. But when I left college, it was kind of a push to start that mobile disco business. And I've got to be honest, everybody I knew, all my friends, even the family, said, you're never going to make a go of this. But I did. I made sure I did it. And it was partly about pushing myself to get out there and do something. And here's the thing, even after I started that disco business, it took me quite some time to get on there and pick up the microphone and do all that DJ stuff. Actually, I had another lad came with me who did that. And although I got better at it, using an awful lot of techniques, which I'll go into in a minute, it took me a while to get there. And then even when I could use the microphone behind all the lights and the big sound system, I had to work to then be able to speak to the bride and groom. So I pushed myself to do public speaking. So to sum it all up very quickly, I went from the age of 16 of having a bad stammer, unable to say any words, becoming SOK. I had no confidence, no self-esteem, but I pushed myself to be standing up in front of hundreds of thousands of people regularly at the weekends DJing. I was up 3 or 4 times a week public speaking, and I became a totally different person to the person I was. And that's quite a big jump. I know when I speak to clients and I tell them that I did that, they say, I'll never do that. But we see them doing this. It's quite strange. So what I did that made a difference was that, yes, I changed my diet. I started looking after my health. I changed my diet. I changed the food. And most importantly, I changed my thinking. I started to read massively loads of things on hypnosis and self-hypnosis. I got into something called neuro-linguistic programming. I didn't understand it, but what I did do was start trying the little techniques, and some of them worked and most of them didn't. And slowly I built that confidence, and that I could almost step into a different person and be somebody different. And the whole way it works with anxiety is that we have a mindset, we have a mental state that we can wake up and suddenly feel really anxious, upset, or nervous, or whatever it is. And then by bringing in a lot of the techniques that I've learned to breathe, to calm down, to decide how I want to feel. And it's almost like there's a slowing of time, in that if you imagine you're in a room and somebody has a go at you that would push you into anxiety, you can stop, you can breathe, you can step back and say, this is how I choose to react. And that's what I teach people to do, to get into those good mental states. So if they're in a bad state when they get up, or somebody else triggers them to get into it, we use a lot of these techniques. And some of them are pattern interrupts, where we stop the anxiety, we start to examine it, we start to try and understand what it's telling us. We can then use different techniques to start to feel good. And it's about finding those positive mental states within every single client I've seen. There are some good states in there where you've had a great time, you really felt relaxed, you felt comfortable, and it's finding those and expanding them and making them work for you. And that's really what we do. So we use self-hypnosis, we use NLP, that's neuro-linguistic programming, we use loads of little psychological tricks and tips that make it work as well. But I think the difference is that we look at your diet, your lifestyle, and all the things that are going on to help you to not stay in that mental state all the time. So for me, it was learning to do new behaviors in the mind. This is where it all happens. Anxiety happens up in the mind, if this is where you believe it is or whether you believe it's here. People have different views. But it's starting to change those behaviors. If normally you do A, we start to bring in B. And hypnosis, hypnotherapy is very powerful for doing that. NLP is also a great way for rewiring those patterns in the brain. And that's how I kind of did it. It's a good story. Lots of people ask me about it. Sometimes I get up and I do feel a little bit nervous from day to day, and I just change it. That's quite normal. There's all sorts of stuff going on. And it's about you controlling your mind and your thoughts and your emotions rather than them sort of controlling you. So that's the important part about it. It's too much to go into every single technique I've done, but this is part of what we do when we take on clients, if people are serious to make the changes, and that we show them how to do that. So yes, I went from being very shy, very nervous, stammer, anxiety, stress, the whole lot, to becoming a DJ and then doing public speaking. And I got rid of the anxiety pretty quickly. The stress thing was something that came back to me again and again. I've run various businesses for years, and I've just found when I overdo it, when I overwork it, if I don't look after myself, stress becomes a problem. So the key with stress is, again, you need to learn some techniques, give yourself some self-care, and I don't really have those now, so it's pretty good. Just a reminder, if you just come on, you can ask questions. Feel free to ask questions anywhere on the comment section, and I'll answer what I can at the end. So let's see what other questions we've got. Yes, okay, so I got asked a big one to say, what is the difference between therapy and counselling? That's a great question, because first of all, different people give the same things different names, or different things the same names, and different therapists work in different ways. So counselling usually is where people sit down, they do something called cognitive behavioural therapy. They'll sit and they'll talk about it, and it's very helpful for somebody to sit and listen to and have somebody to talk to over a cup of tea, and it helps. Therapy helps. Some people it helps a lot, some people it helps in a big way. However, I don't find it gets rid of the problem. It's great that you can learn to cope with anxiety, or just find a way to get around it and make life better. And for some people, that's a major thing, but it's very different than what I do. And I suppose what you could call what I do is therapy. It's different in that it's not years of drawn out therapy or counseling. It's usually 3 or 4 sessions. We usually sort it out in 90 days or less. Therapy is a case in that we're not going to sit and go back over your past forever and drag all that back up. It's really about, what are you experiencing now? Where do you want to be? How do you want to feel? How do you want to react? And then we give you the skills to do that. So it might be that suddenly this trigger comes in and causes us to have a problem. Might be the boss has a go at us, somebody cuts us up and we get anxious, or the baby screams. But instead what we do is we teach you to be over here, which is calm and relaxed. And we teach you how to anchor it by pushing 2 fingers together. You might have seen this before. So that when you get into a good state, you can press the good fingers, relax, feel wonderful, and get into that lovely state of feeling calm and in control. So counselling, I would say, is spending years talking about it. It's quite often drawn out, where therapy is a faster way of doing it. However, the way that we do it is, let's get it sorted quickly. We know the mind works much faster when it does it quickly. We know that the brain can change and make instant changes. If you've had anxiety or stress or depression for quite a while, it's not something that's going to go away overnight, but usually within 30 to 90 days, we get it totally cracked, and we get people where they want to be. It's all about getting results. That's what we care about. Now, counselling, as I mentioned before, can be lots and lots of different things. So you can't class everything as the same thing. And there's lots of people out there, so I'm not knocking counselling at all. However, most of the clients that come to see me have sort of gone down every other route before. They've gone through the NHS, who quite often do CBT for free. They might have been stuck on a waiting list that's taken a long time. They might have seen a therapist or a counsellor, and it's taken years and years and years, and they don't feel better. Some people don't like the idea that you drag up the past and you go through it again and again, which psychology kind of does that. It kind of works down that sort of route. We don't do that. Psychiatry is very different again, in that really they're managing people with drugs rather than anything else. So the idea is, let's find out where you want to be, give you the patterns, let's change those mental behaviors and make you feel good. Next question is, will what we do work for everyone? The question I suppose you should reframe it is, are you willing to work to get where you want to be? I would say 99% of the clients who come to see us do really well, and they reduce that anxiety way down, or they totally get rid of it. We're very strict in that when we take on a client, or we consider taking on a client, we check how committed you are. Some people said, yes, I'd love to get rid of my anxiety, but I'm not willing to give up watching the telly, or I'm not willing to change this behavior, or add this in, or change this food. You've got to be at the point where you say, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to sort this problem out. There can be loads of reasons why we've got anxiety. It might be there's a bad relationship. It's quite rare, but if somebody else is constantly there winding you up, you need to get out of their path. You don't want to be around somebody like that. It's about getting on. So we have a very, very high success rate, and that's because we do filter out an awful lot of people who come to us. We maybe tell people to come back in 3 or 4 months when you're ready to do it. Or it might be that we suggest a different pathway for it. Can we help with kids? Anxiety with kids is getting very, very big today. And the reason being is social media, the press, the expectations on everybody. It's affecting everybody. However, anxiety can also come from the people around you. As I mentioned, my mother is still very anxious. My dad's still stressed, even though he doesn't work anymore. So the idea is, anxiety kind of can be catching. It's something we can pick up from somebody else. It's not infectious, but we can start patting other people around us. And it's we've kind of got to get into a good place. So to answer the question, kids with anxiety, yes, there's a lot we can do with kids. Kids usually take to it a lot easier because they're much more open to learn and they're taking new techniques faster. There's a lot we can do. However, part of that's got to be that we deal with the family around them to make sure we take away any causes or influences of anxiety. And it's also about helping the parents to help the children. That's a big, big part of it. And it's really important that when we learn these skills, we use them to help other people, not just kids, but there's difficult people and older people and all sorts of people around us. And it's just the words that we use, the tonality, the breathing. There's so many things we can do. But if we go charging around the house, trying to get everything done, and that makes somebody anxious, we might need to change that. And yes, we can really help with kids. And I've got a really good colleague called Yvette who is brilliant with kids. She deals with lots of difficult kids, and sometimes we might refer somebody on to her, so that's really good. Medications, the next question. Do we do any work with medication? If you're already on medication for anxiety, I would suggest that you stay on it. I'll never ever advise you on your medication. It's not my field of expertise. The way that I do like to work is that I'll say to people, let's start working on the program. Let's start getting you feeling an awful lot better. And when you get to that stage, then you can go back to your doctor and look to reduce your medication if he thinks that's a good idea. Maybe they need to get in touch and we do it in small stages. However, the point of what we do is that you change what's happening in your mind so that long term you don't need medication. Medication can be very useful. It helps you to calm down. It's really good for emergencies. It does have its place. However, clients report all the time that they start a medication and it starts to wear off in many cases. Sometimes the doses needs to be pushed up and then it wears off again. Sometimes there's other drugs come in. The challenge with all drugs and medication is there are side effects which scare the hell out of me and an awful lot of other clients as well. And ideally, we'll look at everything that we can before going down the medication route. So we're looking at the mental health side. We're looking at your diet. We always try and get a food sensitivity test done because, as I keep saying, certain foods can make things worse. We've done a couple of videos about that. I'll publish a couple of articles on that shortly. So there's lots of different things that we can do. Ideally, at the end of the day, it's about getting the results for you and working the best that we can. Do we have any questions there, Mel?
How much are sessions?
I've got to be honest, as a rule, I don't work by the session when it deals with anxiety. The first thing we'll do a free session with you. We do a free strategy session, and this is where we'll just spend some time on the phone, figuring out how bad your anxiety is, if there's any other health problems there that need help with. It's not something we can fix in one go, so it's something we'll do as a program, as a price for the transformation. Typically, you're looking at 4 or 5 sessions when it comes to severe anxiety, and we can give you a better price then. I know there are some therapists who they'll charge you sort of £100 a session or something like that. We don't work that way. We just want to put it right and get it working for you. It does actually work out an awful lot cheaper than spending years in private therapy or private counselling. It's just let's get it sorted in 90 days. It also depends on how much you're willing to do. We'll do quite a bit of homework with people. We give you a lot of stuff to do in between each session that we arrange. And then we see at the end of it how far you've got with that, what works and what difference, and it works from there. But once we've done that free strategy session, which you can book by just commenting below or sending me a message, once we've spent 20, 30 minutes on the phone, I can give you a price there. Any other prices, Mel? Any other questions, Mel?
No.
No, that's good. Okay. Well, thank you for that, guys. I hope I've answered your questions for tonight. If you have any other questions, please comment, and I'll try and do another live tomorrow or the day after. If you've got any friends that would benefit from these little talks, then please tag them in the comments or send my link to them. And finally, if you'd like one of those free strategy sessions, simply drop me a message or comment below, and I'll get that arranged for you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Take care.
Oh, yeah.